In the late 1800s, New York City solved a crisis by creating a nightmare. Overcrowded, filthy, and drowning in poverty, the city had a surplus of children. The solution was to pack them onto steam engines and ship them toward the setting sun. This was the Orphan Train Movement. Between 1854 and 1929, over 200,000 children were loaded into iron cars and sent into the American void. Officially, it was a mercy mission. Unofficially, it was a lottery where the prize was survival and the penalty was erasure. The trains would scream to a halt in small Midwestern towns. The doors would slide open, letting out the smell of coal smoke and unwashed bodies. These children were lined up on wooden platforms, not as humans, but as inventory. Farmers would walk the line. They didn't look for a child's smile. They checked the calluses on their hands. They inspected teeth. They felt the strength of a 10-year-old's back. If you were strong, you were chosen. If you were small, sickly, or too quiet, you were forced back into the dark of the railcar to wait for the next town. But the further west the trains went, the stranger the records became. Railway logs began to describe what historians now call ghost coaches. These were cars that departed New York with 40 children, but arrived at the final stop with none. No adoption papers were filed, no death certificates were issued. The seats were simply empty. The only things left behind were the echoes: a single scuffed shoe, a tattered doll, or a scrap of paper with a mother's name that no longer mattered. Officials called it a clerical error, but you don't lose 40 children to a typo. The most chilling case comes from a Missouri line in 1890. Witnesses at 5 separate stations reported seeing a boy in a distinctive blue wool coat. He stood apart from the others. Every time a family tried to select him, the train agent stepped in. "He is already spoken for," the agent would whisper, pulling the boy back into the shadows of the car. By the final stop, the boy was seen being led into the conductor's private quarters. When the train was cleaned that night, the boy was gone. When investigators finally tracked down the conductor, his response was a cold, blank stare. He claimed there was no boy in a blue coat. He claimed the car had been empty for 3 stops. The agent had vanished into another route under another name. The system relied on trust in men who operated in the middle of nowhere, accountable to no one. Children were renamed at every stop. Some didn't even have names. They were just listed as male, age 8. If a child was removed from a train in the middle of a Kansas cornfield at 2 a.m, who would know? Who would even look for them? They were invisible by design. The orphan trains saved many. They built families and populated the West. But if you stand on the abandoned platforms of the old Missouri lines today, you might realize that the wind sounds a lot like a steam whistle. Because somewhere along those tracks, there are children who boarded a train in 1890, and they are still waiting to arrive.